Welcome back to the Explainer. Let's just dive straight into part 2 of our deep dive on the Category J rig class. If you were with us for part 1, you know we covered the fundamental engineering that makes these structures the absolute heavyweights of the North Sea. But today, we're moving from theory right into reality. We're going to look at the actual rigs currently out there braving the elements, and we'll establish one absolutely crucial habit that separates a careful engineer from a truly dangerous one.
So just a real quick recap to set the stage for our new material today. When we say Category J, we are talking about a massive 70 to 150 meter water depth operating range, alongside a staggering 10,000 meter maximum drilling depth capacity. We're talking an operational air gap of roughly 69 meters just to clear those 100-year storm waves. It is a purpose-built, harsh environment beast.
To really grasp the sheer scale we're dealing with, it's time to meet the massive physical rigs actually carrying that class designation in the North Sea today. Picture this. The Askeladden lit up like a small floating city against the absolute pitch black of the ocean. A storm strong enough to capsize a supply boat could be hitting this platform, and the driller on the floor, they barely even feel it.
All right, Section 1. Meet the sister units. Let's officially introduce the 3 heavyweight sister units. The primary active rigs carrying the Cat J flag right now are the Askepot and the Askeladden, both of which were built by Samsung Heavy Industries in South Korea for Statoil, which is now Equinor, of course. And then we have the Noble Lloyd Noble, built by Jurong Shipyard in Singapore. They all share that exact same incredible Gusto MSC CJ70 baseline design.
Which brings us to Section 2. Class is not identical. Now, here is a vital engineering maxim that honestly separates the careful professionals from the dangerous ones, and it's a spot where a lot of newer folks get tripped up. Think of the Cat J class like a Boeing 737. The baseline Gusto MSC airframe and structural design, yeah, those are standardized and certified. But just like a 737 flown by one airline can have a completely different cockpit and engines than one built a decade earlier, the onboard equipment on these rigs varies wildly over their life cycle. A perfect example is Askepot's 2024 shore power electrification. Askepot was modified to run on high-voltage AC power via the Martin Linge A platform, which saves something like 20,000 tons of CO2 annually. Its sister units, they might have totally different setups. It's the exact same airframe family, but a completely different actual aircraft.
So the big takeaway here is this. You must never, ever assume a rig's capabilities based merely on its class name. Sister unit simply does not mean identical equipment. You always have to verify the specific unit's current configuration before you plan your operation.
Moving on to Section 3. Pushing the depth limits.
Let's visualize exactly why operators demanded these massive rigs be built in the first place. Why go to all this expense? Well, looking at the numbers here, that 10,000 meter drilling depth capacity of a Cat J is literally nearly double what your standard conventional jackup is rated to handle. We are talking about fundamentally stretching the limits of what a fixed, bottom-supported platform can physically achieve.
Now, someone new to this might look at that number and think, whoa, isn't that overkill? But it's not. That massive headroom is exactly why operators reach for a Cat J on those complex, deep, high-pressure well designs on the Norwegian continental shelf. That 10,000 meter capacity isn't some luxury add-on. It is the fundamental reason this class exists.
Okay, Section 4. Respecting the certified envelope.
Knowing what the rig can do is only half the battle, right? Knowing what happens when you ignore those limits is where safety actually lives. Let's test this with a critical what-if scenario. I want you to pause here and really think about this. What physically happens if you try to force a standard rig into a Cat J's harsh environment location? Say you take a rig rated for just 300 feet of water depth and force it to execute a Cat J-rated program in deep, harsh waters.
Well, you'd be looking straight at a certified envelope violation. The standard rig physically might not even be able to reach the bottom. But even if it could, its jacking systems, its legs, its entire structural hull design simply weren't rated for the massive wave and wind loads at that depth. It is a fast-tracked to a catastrophic structural failure, or, at best, having your operation entirely suspended by the class society.
So, when you're looking at this towering marvel of engineering, keep the fundamental rule of thumb in mind. A careful engineer always checks the water depth and the max drilling numbers first. If either of those numbers falls short of what your well program requires, the rig does not get shortlisted for the job. Period. You just do not push past the certified operating envelope.
Let's wrap this up with 3 golden rules I want you to burn into your memory today.
First, always check specific configurations. Remember that 737 analogy? Second, don't assume sister units are identical. Askapot's electrification is your proof right there. And third, respect the certified envelope. Water depth and drilling capacity are hard limits, not friendly suggestions.
All right, now that you know what this rig is and the strict discipline required to operate it safely, coming up next time, we're going to dive into what actually holds this whole shebang up. We'll be exploring the massive physical foundations, the hull, those crazy 700-foot legs, and the skirted spud cans that prevent punch-through on the seabed.
But before we go, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought to chew on before the next explainer. If sister rigs look identical on the outside but are completely different on the inside, what happens when a seasoned crew is transferred from the Askapot over to the Askeladdin and simply assumes everything operates exactly the same way? Think about the hidden dangers lurking in that assumption. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me,